We ready? We're ready? We're going?
Yeah, we're going.
First want to say hello to Avery, who was nice enough to join us, a new friend, and let George know that he's subscribed and watching now. And then obviously Andre and all the boys from Brazil, all the friends that we have in Brazil. It seems that as far as YouTube is concerned, almost half of the people that watch these videos are from Brazil. So, yeah.
Strange, yeah.
Yeah. But it's cool. It's halfway around the world. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, tonight we're going to be reading the Essentials for Attaining Buddhahood. But before on page 746 of volume 1 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. But before I do that, I'm going to read from the dictionary what the definition of the fusion of reality and wisdom, which is Kyochi Myogo, is. If I said that, does everybody know what Kyochi Myogo is? Okay, okay, you know what Kyochi Myogo is. What? Okay, what is Kyochi Myogo in your mind? Give me a literal definition. I just said it. Thank you. Traditionally, it was always taught to me before they had all this stuff, all these dictionaries. It was fusion with the Gohonzon. Okay? When you connect directly in a very deep way with the Gohonzon. Okay? And that's what actually Kyochi Myogo is from a definitive standpoint as well. It says, the fusion of reality and wisdom, the fusion of the objective reality, the fusion of the objective reality or truth and the subjective wisdom to realize that truth, okay? Which is the Buddha nature inherent within one's life. Do you understand what they're talking about there then? Okay, so the objective reality or truth and the subjective wisdom to realize that truth. So there's what the truth is, and then your capacity to correctly perceive that, what it is. All right? It says, since enlightenment or Buddhahood is defined as the state in which one fully realizes the ultimate reality, the fusion of reality and wisdom means enlightenment. Okay? Tentai discusses this principle in the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra. In the annotations on the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra, Myolo associates Shakyamuni Buddha and many treasures as they are portrayed in the Treasure Tower, 11th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, with the fusion of reality and wisdom. This chapter describes Shakyamuni Buddha seated side by side with many treasures Buddha in the Treasure Tower. Myolo writes that these two Buddhas seated in this manner signify the fusion of reality and wisdom. All right, everybody's with me? You remember the Lotus Sutra, right? Nichiren identifies the law that underlies the fusion of reality and wisdom as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and asserts that he embodied his enlightenment to that law, the fusion of reality and wisdom, in the form of the Gohonzon, the object of devotion. Okay, the object of devotion he established. In terms of Buddhist practice for people in the latter day of the law, Nichiren maintained that when they chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with deep faith in the Gohonzon, they achieve the fusion of reality and wisdom within their own lives and are thus able to manifest the Buddha nature and attain Buddhahood. According to Nichiren, the Buddha nature constitutes reality. According to Nichiren, the Buddha nature constitutes reality, and faith in the Gohonzon, the embodiment of that nature, corresponds to wisdom. Nichiren states reality means the true nature of all phenomena, and wisdom means the illuminating and manifesting of this true nature. Everybody's with me? Okay, so this is when the riverbed of reality is infinitely broad and deep. Okay, can you get that simile? Riverbed is the container for the water of the river to flow in, right? The water of wisdom will flow ceaselessly. When this reality and wisdom are fused, one attains Buddhahood in one's present form. What then are these two elements of reality and wisdom? They are simply the 5 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? And then also, before I start reading the Gosho itself. I want to go to page 3 of the orally transmitted teachings, where the Daishonin actually gives a definition of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And in the first paragraph, this is very key also. He says, the record of the orally transmitted teachings, Angikuden, it says, Namu or Nam is a Sanskrit word. Here it means to dedicate one's life, that is, to the person and to the law. In terms of the person, one dedicates one's life to Shakyamuni Buddha. In terms of the law, one dedicates one's life to the Lotus Sutra. Dedication means dedication to the principle of eternal and unchanging truth of the theoretical teaching, and life means one's life dedicated to that principle bases itself on the wisdom of the truth of the essential teaching that functions in accordance with changing circumstances. In essence, one dedicates one's life to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So, in reality, when we're chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon, and we achieve Kyochi Myogo, what's really occurring at that? What makes that time in front of the Gohonzon different than other times? Because you won't always be in that kind of a sincere, deep state. Frankly speaking, there will be times that you're chanting at the Gohonzon, and sometimes when you're chanting to the Gohonzon. So, what's that kind of define?
Your life condition.
One is a sense, totally your life condition. Okay, totally your life condition, because that's what we're really trying to. When we get in front of the Gohonzon, we should be trying to achieve Kyochi Myogo. Okay, we shouldn't sit down just casually. We do all the time, and we chant that way casually, and we get about as much out of it as we would expect we might when we do it casually. When we go with a seeking spirit, when we're trying to perceive things, that we're trying to grow our Buddha nature so that it becomes something that we can see as a prevalent aspect of the true reality of our life, right? We're basically going there and we're seeking. So that's a seeking kind of Daimoku, right? So at that point in time, you're trying to obtain wisdom. You're not complaining. You're not thinking about other things. You're not frivolously wondering when are you going to be able to quit. You're there as though you were sitting in front of a teacher to learn something. All right? And you draw forth that knowledge through the sincerity of the connection that you make. So I would like to personally define, for you to try and think of it the way I'm trying to explain it, because not everybody's going to perceive the Gohonzon as the life of the eternal Buddha. Okay, that's a process that's going to occur over a period of time. That's not going to happen at the beginning of your practice, unless you meet a correct teacher that's so impressive that you buy into that fact on the front end. Okay, that's what happened with me. All right, I read the lectures on the sutra by Josei Toda, and President Toda's like laying all this stuff out very strictly about Nichiren Daishonin. So that's the way I came into it. That's the way I was able to understand it. But if you go in, if you read the entity of the mystic law as another writing, a major writing, written to Sairenbo, so it's a heavy duty one. He basically explains that whether we perceive the Gohonzon absolutely correctly or not isn't the key. The key is the fact that we pursue a relationship with the Gohonzon. In other words, your ability to perceive the Gohonzon as the life of the eternal Buddha will manifest naturally as long as you're seeking from the Gohonzon, even though you might think of it like something outside of you. You're pursuing the truth outside of you instead of understanding that the truth lies within you, and you're going to bring it forth from bringing forth your Buddha nature. You don't understand the mechanism that's actually occurring because it's not time yet. You haven't done this long enough yet for those deeper understandings to kick in. So for me, I want you to try and understand Kyochi Myogo from the perspective when you're speaking to the Gohonzon as a bodhisattva of the earth, as a disciple of the original teacher. Okay? And the beautiful thing about this Gosho is like how often I always talk about the original teacher, the original teacher, the original teacher. Because I want to take it back further than, Nichiren Daishonin in 13th century Japan, right? So This Gosho, he's going to really talk about correct teachers. He's going to talk about the original teacher. He's going to use that term quite often, and it's going to be my pleasure to help make you aware of what the depths of this teaching actually is saying to the ability that I have to do so. So, starting on page 746 is the Gosho, but we always read the whole Gosho instead of like a paragraph or two. And so I'm going to start with the background on page 748. All right, here we go. Background. This letter is addressed to Soya. A lot of good ones are. A lay follower who lived in Soya village in Shimosa province. His full name and title were Soya Jiro Hyonojo Kyoshin, and he is thought to have been an official of the high court of the Kamakura shogunate. He had converted to Nichiren Daishonin's teachings around 1260 and became one of the leading believers in the area, together with Toki Jonin and Ota Jomyo. In 1271, Soya became a lay priest and was given the Buddhist name Horin Nichirai by the Daishonin. Horin built 2 temples and lived at one of them until he died in 1291 at the age of 68. In this letter, the Daishonin first quotes the Expedient Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra and states, "The way to Buddhahood lies within the 2 elements of reality and wisdom. Reality indicates the ultimate truth that the law permeates all phenomena in the universe. Wisdom, on the other hand, means the ability to perceive and understand this truth." So everybody understands, right? The law, and then the ability to correctly perceive the law. When you're chanting that way in front of the Gohonzon, that's exactly what you're doing. Because whether you perceive the Gohonzon as the original teacher or not, you're still seeking from the Buddha nature that you've been introduced to. All right? That will eventually, through study, you'll assimilate what he's actually saying all this time. When the wisdom exists, when this wisdom exists, when the water of wisdom fills the riverbed of reality, it is known as the fusion of reality and wisdom. This is enlightenment. In other words, one illuminates and manifests the law in one's own life. So what is enlightenment? What is Buddhahood? Perceiving and bringing forth your Buddha nature by connecting to the original teacher through the process of chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon. All right? The Daishonin stresses that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the law that unites both reality and wisdom, because that's the manner in which you can achieve that wisdom in the face of the reality of the Sahe world. It is the seed of Buddhahood for all people in the latter day. This law is to be propagated by Bodhisattva superior practices at the beginning of the latter day. The Daishonin states that he is the first one to embark on this great mission, by which he is really indicating that he is the original teacher who will lead all people to enlightenment. This is the key. Shakyamuni didn't teach Nichiren. All right? It didn't work that way. The Buddhism of the sowing and the Buddhism of the harvest are distinctly different. Next, although they're exactly fit on top of one another. Next, he points out that any teacher or disciple who ignores those who commit slander of the law will fall into hell. This amounts to a compassionate warning about the responsibility believers have to protect the Buddha's teachings. Okay, so going to the Gosho on page 746, the essentials for attaining Buddhahood. The Expedient Means chapter in volume 1 of the Lotus Sutra states, "The wisdom of the Buddhas is infinitely profound and immeasurable." So what did that just say? Infinitely profound and immeasurable. What would that indicate? It would indicate that this wisdom is beyond the grasp of ordinary human beings. This is the realm of Buddhahood. Buddhahood is required to perceive this wisdom as it actually exists, okay? He says a commentary says that the riverbed of reality is described as infinitely profound because it is boundless, right? What is the riverbed of reality? life in the real world, life in the Sahe world, you know, the riverbed of reality is reality, right? Mm-hmm. The riverbed is the thing containing it. It's all of us. It's everything around us is that riverbed, okay? Okay. A commentary says that the riverbed of reality is described as infinitely profound because it is boundless, and that the water of wisdom is described as immeasurable because it is hard to fathom. In other words, how much of their wisdom is there? There's an infinite amount of wisdom. That river's always continuing to flow, right? Okay, so it is not the meaning of the sutra and the commentary that the way to Buddhahood lies within the two elements of reality and wisdom. Reality means the true nature of all phenomena, and wisdom means the illuminating and manifesting of this true nature. So what did he just say there? Reality means the true nature of all phenomena. Okay, so reality is the true aspect of all the things we see in the phenomenal realm, right? But what is that true aspect? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, right? Everything is a manifestation of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's the whole premise of the Buddhism of the sowing. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the fundamental essence of everything, the essence of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? And wisdom means the illuminating and manifesting of this true nature. So it's the perceiving of this truth correctly, which qualifies it as wisdom. Do you understand? All right, and the manifestation of that is the expression of that wisdom in your life with your life. So it's not academic wisdom. It's not knowing a bunch of stuff. It's perceiving the correct manner to exist. There's a huge difference. Okay, one is a vow that goes beyond just mind candy and knowing stuff, and goes into the realm of your action, which is what ultimately qualifies you as what? The Buddha. If you're going to be the Buddha, there are certain actions that you're going to reflect, or you're not really the Buddha. You know, it's just a fun name to lay on people. All right? So he says, where am I? Okay, by realizing this attains Buddha.
Wisdom means the illusion, and manifesting is the true nature. The second paragraph, middle.
Right here. Okay, pardon me. I'm that far back. Okay. When the reality and wisdom are fused, one attains Buddhahood in one's present form. Right? Reality means the true nature of all phenomena, and wisdom means the illuminating and manifesting of this true nature. All right? Thus, when the riverbed of reality is infinitely broad and deep, the water of wisdom will flow ceaselessly. When this reality and wisdom are fused, one attains Buddhahood in one's present form. So he's talking about the wisdom is ceaseless. You don't have a finite amount of wisdom. Your wisdom will continue to compound itself and grow during the course of your life, to the last moment of your life. The sutras expounded prior to the Lotus Sutra cannot lead to Buddhahood because they are provisional and expedient means that separate reality and wisdom. Do you understand? Because they lack Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. All right? The Lotus Sutra, however, unites the two as a single entity. Now, understand the complexity of this. It unites the two. It says it doesn't bring the two together. It actually reveals that they were always the same thing. Okay? The sutra says that the Buddhas opened the door of Buddha wisdom to all living beings. They opened the door by introducing the true teaching in the Sahe world. They, they opened the door The sutra says that the Buddhas opened the door of wisdom to all living beings. Show it, cause them to awaken to it, and induce them to enter its path. By realizing this Buddha wisdom, one attains Buddhahood. Everybody's with me, right? Yes. All right, so this inner enlightenment. So this is a perception when we're talking about this Buddhahood, right?
Right.
This is a perception. It's the perception of the fact that you are the Buddha exactly as you are. This inner enlightenment of the Buddha is far beyond the understanding of voice hearers and prakyeka Buddhists, because only someone has achieved actual Ichinen Sanzen can understand that from more than a theoretical perspective. Right? This is why the Expedient Means chapter goes on to say not one of the voice hearers or prakyeka Buddhists is able to comprehend it, because they haven't done what's necessary for it to be comprehended. What then are these two elements of reality and wisdom? They are simply the 5 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Shakyamuni Buddha called forth the bodhisattvas of the earth and entrusted to them these 5 characters that constitute the essence of the sutra. This is the teaching that was transferred to the bodhisattvas who had been the disciples of the Buddha since the remote past. The Lotus Sutra states that Bodhisattva's superior practices and the others will appear in the first 500 years of the latter day of the law to propagate the 5 characters, the embodiment of the 2 elements of reality and wisdom. Do you understand what he's talking about there in code? And he says, the Lotus Sutra states that Bodhisattva's superior practices and others will appear in the first 500 years of the latter day of the law to propagate the 5 characters, the embodiment of the 2 elements of reality and wisdom, which he's already qualified as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Right. So who's going to appear? The original teacher and his disciples, the Bodhisattvas of the earth. This sutra makes this perfectly clear. But don't forget, the sutra was written to the participants that were there at the assembly, also for the original disciples of Shakyamuni that would manifest in the former and the middle day of the law, and then separately, it's there as something to trigger the beginning of the Buddhism of the sowing in the latter day. All right? This sutra makes this perfectly clear. Who could possibly dispute it? I, Nichiren, and neither Bodhisattva's superior practices nor his envoy, but I precede them, spreading the 5 characters to prepare the way. There's certain things he can't say overtly. Bodhisattva's superior practices receive the water of the wisdom of the mystic law from the thus come one Shakyamuni, and causes it to flow into the wasteland of the people's lives in the evil world of the latter age. This is the function of wisdom. Does everybody understand? The function of wisdom is to flow ceaselessly, forever filling that riverbed. All right? Enabling everyone to discover and achieve their original state. Be the Buddhas that they are. This is the function of wisdom. Shakyamuni Buddha transferred this teaching to Bodhisattva superior practices, and now Nichiren propagates it in Japan. With regard to the transfer of teachings, it is divided into 2 categories, general and specific. So the transfer of the teachings, so what's he talking about there? In the Lotus Sutra, do you remember? Okay, because he definitely transfers the law for the latter day to the Bodhisattvas of the earth, and they split. And then he continues to preach, right? Okay, so he's saying, with regard to the transfer of teachings, it is divided into 2 categories, general and specific. If you confuse the general with the specific, even in the slightest, you will never be able to attain Buddhahood and will wander in suffering through endless transmigrations of births and deaths. Okay? But what's he really referring to when he's talking about this specific and general? It's the aspects of the Lotus Sutra that pertain to those that were for the assembly and the former and the middle day, and the aspects that pertain to the Bodhisattvas of the earth. And the aspects of that pertain to the Bodhisattvas of the earth are interpreted by their original teacher, the thus come one Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, not Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni is also preaching to his disciples who manifest in the former and the middle day. But do Shakyamuni's disciples manifest in the latter day of the law? No, according to the Lotus Sutra. No, they don't. All right? So he says, If you confuse the general with the specific, even in the slightest, you'll never be able to attain Buddhahood and will wander in suffering through endless transmigrations of births and deaths. What he's basically saying there is if you try to attain Anattara Samyak Sambodhai, supreme perfect enlightenment, with the Buddhism of the harvest, in the latter day of the law, you'll never get there. That's what that just said. All right? So he says, don't confuse when he's talking about the people of the latter day versus the people of the former and the middle day. For example, the voice hearers in Shakyamuni Buddha's lifetime received the seeds of Buddhahood from Shakyamuni in the distant past when he was the 16th son of the great universal, of the Buddha Great Universal Wisdom Excellence, right? We all know that, right? Right. So, therefore, they could not attain enlightenment by following a Amida, medicine master, or any other Buddha. Do you understand what he's saying there? You attain Buddhahood by following the Buddha that is your original teacher. If you're a bodhisattva of the earth, who is your original teacher? The original, the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, thus come one. Nichiren is a transient identity that occurred for the manifestation in the latter day. But again, don't forget, according to our perception of the Buddhism of the sowing, it actually proceeds as an understanding and a correct teaching the Buddhism of the harvest. Right? Because somebody had to start all this. Right? So, he says, therefore, they could not attain enlightenment by following a Amida, medicine master, or any other Buddha. So you can't, he's saying also in between the lines there, you cannot attain Buddhahood in the latter day by following Shakyamuni. Okay? You've got to embrace the teaching of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo in the latter day. To illustrate, if a family member brings home water from the ocean, the entire family can use it. But if they were to refuse even a single drop of that water and instead go looking for water from some other ocean, it would be terribly misguided and foolish. In the same way, to forget the original teacher who had brought one the water of wisdom from the great ocean of the Lotus Sutra and instead follow another would surely cause one to sink into endless sufferings of birth and death. Do you understand?
Yes.
What's he saying there very strictly? Don't turn against me, because I'm the one that got you there. All right? That
So
goes for
when you're
all of
there, you
us
cannot
and all of our teachers. Do you understand? All right, so he's saying, in the same way, to forget the original teacher who had brought one the water, the person that ignited the spark. Of course, you're the one responsible for your own Buddhahood. But you always have a teacher. There are always influences, because that's the way the Gohonzon talks. The Gohonzon doesn't have vocal cords, right? So when you seek the wisdom of the Gohonzon, the Buddha that is the original teacher, it's manifest in your environment through dependent origination through the teachers that have also been taught by that teacher that are subsequently teachers, right? So he's saying, you would certainly cause one to sink in endless sufferings of birth and death. So he's saying, don't, as a warning, don't slander Nichiren. Don't slander correct teachers. One should abandon even one's teacher, though, if he or she is misguided, though there will be cases where this is not necessary. One should decide according to the principles both of the world and of Buddhism. Okay? So what's he saying there? What I'm talking about, he's saying, what I'm talking about, though, should be something that extends into your daily life, not just the theoretical aspect of doctrine and gobbledygook religious, who knows, okay? There should be power that's being effectively reflected here, all right? He's saying the world, one should decide according to the principles of both the world and Buddhism. So if you're being taught something that's not taking you anywhere in your daily life, not empowering your life. That teacher's not getting you where you need to go. All right? Priests in the latter day of the law are ignorant of the principles of Buddhism and are conceited, so they despise the correct teacher and fawn on patrons. True priests are those who are honest and yet who desire little and yet no satisfaction. Volume 1 of the Words and Phrases of the Lotus Sutra states, those who have yet to attain the truth should humble themselves before the highest principle, which is comparable to heaven, and feel unabashed before all the sages. Then they will be monks with a sense of shame. Now what's he talking about there? He's really talking about the humility to constantly perceive your teachers in the manner of appreciation and devotion that you always have. No matter how far you advance as a Buddha, you will never ever look down on anybody that helped you get there. You will always look up to them, even though you might have achieved a higher level of perception or accomplishment as a result of them having been that important vital cog to you getting where you got. Do you understand? That this is correct faith is what he's teaching here. All right? Pardon me. Where am I? I do that constantly.
One should abandon even one's
Okay,
teacher.
thank you. One should abandon. Okay, I already said that,
Yeah,
but I'll
you
go
already
ahead and
said
start.
that.
One should abandon even one's teacher if he or she is misguided, though there will be cases in which this is not necessary. One should decide according to the principles of both the world and Buddhism. Priests in the latter day of the law are ignorant of the principles of Buddhism and are conceited, so they despise the correct teacher and fawn on patrons. True priests are those who are honest and who desire little and yet no satisfaction. Volume 1 of the Words and Phrases of the Lotus Sutra states, those who have yet to attain the truth should humble themselves before the highest principle, which is comparable to heaven, and feel abashed before all the sages. Then they will be monks with a sense of shame. When they manifest insight and wisdom, then they will be true monks. All right? Do you understand? When this comes from your life rather than you parroting it, that means you had to go seek it. You couldn't just autopilot and listen. All right? Do you understand what I'm saying? All right? So the Nirvana Sutra states, if even a good monk sees someone destroying the teaching and disregards him, failing to reproach him, to oust him, or to punish him for his offense, then you should realize that that monk is betraying the Buddhist teachings. But if he ousts the destroyer of the law, reproaches or punishes him, then he is my disciple and a true voice hearer. You should etch deeply in your mind the two words see and disregard in the phrase, sees someone destroying the teaching and disregards him, failing to reproach him. Do you understand what he was just talking about there? What's he talking about? Why is he saying you should etch deeply in your mind the two words see and disregard in this phrase? Because if you don't...
You should be wise enough to see that he's the wrong teacher. And
Well, again, seeing is what they're really talking about, being not only the wisdom to see, but the wisdom to perceive what they're saying as being incorrect, and therefore it's poison. Okay? Therefore it must be stood up against, it must be even politely corrected. Okay? It can't be like you heard it, you saw it, and you walked. That's what he's saying. He's saying, but if he ousts the destroyer of the law, oust the destroyer is like to actually get in his face, right? Then and reproaches him or punishes him, then he is my disciple and a true voice hearer. So he's saying slander of the law is not something that you can ever allow to go on, to go by, because, and he's going to explain why the because is here. He says, because both teacher and followers will surely fall into hell of incessant suffering if they see enemies of the Lotus Sutra but disregard and fail to reproach them. The great teacher Nanye says that they will fall into hell along with those evil persons. Okay, now why does he include the teachers if it's only the student is the one that didn't quite get it? Because the teacher didn't teach correctly. If the student didn't get it, then the purpose of the teacher was never fulfilled. The purpose of the teacher is to teach the correct teaching correctly, so that it's etched in the fundamental life condition of that person. Again, what my original teachers taught me, I don't have to think back and think who taught me this. It's etched. Okay? It's become part of my life, even though I know it was taught to me. I can't tell you exactly who taught it or when. All right? So he's saying, both the teacher and followers will surely fall into the hell of incessant suffering if they see enemies of the Lotus Sutra but disregard them and fail to reproach them. The great teacher Nanye says that they will fall into hell along with the evil persons. To hope to attain Buddhahood without speaking out against slander is as futile as trying to find water in the midst of fire or fire in the midst of water. So it's impossible. If you don't refute slander, you can never be considered a Buddha. You have not attained Buddhahood. If you can see slandered and not be, there's just some influence in you that says, I gotta stop this. We gotta talk about this. You have to. You know you can't let it go. All right? Because the teaching is so clearly strict about this point. And that's the reason I'm making it a strict point for you to understand. It's a very strict point. I know it's not comfortable sometimes to say, I don't quite understand it that way. But if you don't at least broach it on that basis, you have now basically said you're correct. That's what the teaching is. The teaching is if you don't open your mouth to say you're not correct, you're basically saying you are correct. And therefore you're spreading an incorrect teaching. You're just as guilty as the person that spoke if you don't speak up when you hear something wrong. That's the point. No matter how sincerely one believes in the Lotus Sutra, if one is guilty of failing to rebuke slander of the law, one will surely fall into hell, just as a single crab leg will ruin 1,000 pots of lacquer. This is the meaning of the passage in the sutra. Because the poison had penetrated deeply and their minds no longer function as before. Because when you see that occurring, what is that actually reflective of? First of all, you're obviously seeing a Buddhist, right? This isn't talking, I'm not talking about Christianity. Okay? This is about incorrect understanding and preaching of the law, not of other religions. I could give a shit. Okay? That doesn't really matter. It's this teaching.
Yes.
Okay? And he says, because the poison has penetrated deeply and their minds no longer function as before. What's that saying? The poison of their karma has poisoned them from the ability to reach that Buddha nature. And by you not doing something to cut off that poison, you're allowing them to go to hell. Which is one of the reasons why you would probably deserve to follow. Do you understand? That's no compassion. So, he says, the sutra states, those persons, don't forget this is an important part, all right? Because it all goes back to the Gohonzon ultimately. Who is your teacher? Who is your teacher? Who is the teacher? He says, the sutra states, those persons who had heard the law dwelled here and there in various Buddha lands, constantly reborn in company with their teachers, plural. Okay? So, teachers is more than one individual. Over the arc of your practice of the decades of a lifetime of faith, it's going to be at different times of your life. Your capacity will have changed. You will have grown. It will be time for a different person to be there to add things that you weren't capable of really perceiving initially. He's saying, so they dwelled here in various lands, constantly reborn in the company of their teachers. And if one stays close to the teachers of the law, one will speedily gain the bodhisattva way. Once you're on the Bodhisattva path, you'll eventually attain Buddhahood, right? By following and learning from these teachers, one will see Buddhas as numerous as Ganges sands. And again, once you attain Buddhahood and you see yourself as a Buddha and see all others as Buddhas, there are as many Buddhas as numerous as the Ganges sands. Every time I see a human being, every time I see anything, there's the Buddha nature in front of me, right? So it's very visible once I understand the truth. But that's the whole point. This is about understanding the truth. He says, a commentary states, originally, one followed this Buddha and for the first time conceived the desire to seek the way. And by following this Buddha again, one will reach the stage where there is no retrogression. All right? Let me stop there. So what's that saying? The teachers that you have, you already have a previous existence relationship with. And who taught those teachers? And who taught their teachers' teachers? And who taught those teachers' teachers' teachers? And so forth and so on and so forth until I get back. I'm going to originally get back to the original teacher. All right? And is there any separation then between the original teacher and the truth of the teaching of the original teacher that's taught correctly by correct teachers? No. So those teachers are all the same thing. They're all united. It is not like one's better than the other or one's different than another. Okay? They're all vessels of the law. Okay? Right? And it's because they're Buddhas that they can activate the Buddha nature in others. All right? So, he says, because I have expounded, where am I? Here. Above all, be sure to, okay. Be above all, another commentary. In the beginning, one followed this Buddha or Bodhisattva and formed a bond with him in the middle of page 748 in the first column.
Another commenter.
In the beginning, one followed this Buddha or Bodhisattva and formed a bond with him. Okay, so you formed a bond with your teacher, and so it will be through this Buddha or Bodhisattva that one will attain one's goal. Enlightenment in your present form.
Yes.
Above all, be sure to follow your original teacher so that you are able to attain Buddhahood. He's talking about himself. Right, the original teacher. The Nam-myoho Renge-kyo thus come one. Shakyamuni Buddha is the original teacher for all people, and moreover he is endowed with the three virtues of sovereign and parent. Because I have expounded this teaching, I have been exiled and almost killed. As the saying goes, good advice grates on the ear, but still I am not discouraged. The Lotus Sutra is like the seed, the Buddha like the sower, and the people like the field. And you should view your own life in the same manner. If you deviate from these principles, not even I can save you in your next life. Okay? With my deep respect, Nichiren. Okay, so going on to the lecture. On page 185, we have already read all of the text that would be included in that by reading the whole Gosho, so we won't read that again. It'll be redundant. Going into page, the highlights in the gray box. First of all, no, I want to skip through this. I want to go through the fusion. I want to go through the gray boxes that are not part of the intro. So first of all, flip to page 188, where it says the fusion of reality and wisdom. Kyochi Myogo again. It's a little bit different than the dictionary, so let's get this one down. Enlightenment is defined as a state in which one fully manifests the wisdom to perceive the objective truth of the Buddha nature inherent within life. Does everybody understand that? Enlightenment is defined as the state in which one fully manifests the wisdom to perceive the objective truth of the Buddha nature inherent within life. That's all life. Okay? That's even insentient beings, right? All right? Nichiren states life at each moment encompasses the body and mind and the self and environment and all the sentient beings in the 10 worlds, as well as all insentient beings in the 3,000 realms, including plants, sky, earth, and even dust, the minutest particles of dust. Life at each moment permeates the entire realm of phenomena and is revealed in all phenomena. To be awakened to this principle is itself the mutually inclusive relationship of life at each moment and all phenomena. Do you understand what this is saying, though, then? Everything is a manifestation of the mystic law. Okay? When you perceive everything, not just other people as Buddhists, when you see the plants, the flowers, when you see everything as the Gohonzon, as a manifestation of the wisdom of the truth of what the Gohonzon actually is and represents. And the only reason you can see that is because of the Gohonzon. Because the Gohonzon is the embodiment of the original teacher, right? So this ability to perceive this, the water that's flowing in that riverbed came from a single source. Do you understand? All right, so he's saying, to be awakened to this principle is itself the mutually inclusive relationship of life at each moment and all phenomena. Buddhahood. Nichiren identifies the law that underlies the fusion of reality and wisdom as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and asserts that he embodied his enlightenment to the fusion of reality and wisdom in the form of the Gohonzon. All right? So anybody that's out there that's just chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, you really need to receive Gohonzon. You need to have the object of devotion as a part of your daily life if you're really serious about attaining Buddhahood. You can start out by just chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but at some point in time, if you want to get to where this is talking about, you can't do it in the absence of the object of devotion, because in reality, the object of devotion is where it all starts from. All right? Nichiren maintains, don't forget, in this, the sixfold secret teaching, the law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo comes from the Gohonzon, not the other way around. Right? Nichiren maintains that when we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with deep faith in the Gohonzon, we achieve the fusion. With deep faith, we achieve the fusion of reality and wisdom within our own lives and are thus able to manifest the Buddha nature. According to Nichiren, the Buddha nature constitutes reality, while faith in the Gohonzon, the embodiment of that nature, corresponds to wisdom. So this, again, only comes from seeking from the Gohonzon, understanding what the Gohonzon actually is. If you see it as just a piece of paper, you're never going to pull this off. This really comes to read the teaching, understand the teaching, and what you don't understand, you seek to understand. You don't just go, well, that's over my head. You know, you sit there in front of the Gohonzon and you demand to perceive the truth. All right? This is actually a function of you communicating directly with the original teacher and bringing out your original state. Okay? That's the way you're able to separate all the gobbledygook you've covered up with the slander of many lifetimes. All right? Going on to generic and specific transfer of the teachings, because this is key. Because in the Lotus Sutra is going to talk about a bunch of stuff that doesn't pertain to us, really. Okay? Because we're bodhisattvas of the earth. We only manifest in the latter day. We're disciples of the original teacher. Shakyamuni is not the original teacher. He attained Buddhahood as the 16th son of great universal wisdom excellence. That doesn't take us to Kuon Ganjo. That only takes us to Sanzen Jintingo and Goyaku Jintingo in terms of time. Right? So, in one sense, general, everybody's with me, right?
Okay.
Okay. In one sense, general refers to an overall or surface view of a particular teaching or doctrine, and specific to a more sharply delineated and profound view. So specific isn't available to everyone. Specific is really only available to those that have a correct teacher that can show them what is specific, to be honest with you. It only comes from that. In Nichiren's doctrine, in Nichiren Daishonin's doctrine, Shakyamuni's teachings can be categorized from the general to the specific. The entire body of teaching is the general truth. The Lotus Sutra is more specific, and the law shown in the lifespan chapter is the most specific teaching. The term The terms general and specific also apply to the transfer or entrustment of the teachings of the Lotus Sutra as described in the sutra. In the entrustment chapter, Shakyamuni makes a general transfer of the sutra to all the bodhisattvas present at the assembly. Okay, but in the supernatural powers chapter, he entrusts it specifically to the bodhisattvas of the earth led by superior practices. Do you understand? While he transfers the sutra to the bodhisattvas of the earth in general, he specifically entrusts it to bodhisattvas' superior practices. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Whose function was fulfilled by Nichiren. Okay. Compassion and refutation on page 195. Hypocrisy is the exact opposite of compassion, especially the hypocrisy of knowing when wrong is being committed in the realm of Buddhism, but doing nothing to address it. If such hypocrisy prevails, lies and pretense will become the norm, and no one will speak the truth. This will ultimately lead to spiritual and moral decay of society. Without a sound spiritual underpinning like that provided by a humanistic religion, the fabric of society will crumble. If erroneous teachings spread to where they enslave and exploit people, they will exert a harmful and poisonous effect on people's hearts and minds. That is why Nichiren Daishonin stresses the importance of steadfastly and resolutely battling the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. He writes, even those with profound faith who do not reproach the enemies of the Lotus Sutra, even those with profound faith do not reproach the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. He writes, even though, okay, I see what he's saying, He writes, even those with profound faith do not reproach the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. However great the good causes one may make, or even if one reads and copies the entirety of the Lotus Sutra 1,000 or 10,000 times, or attains the way of perceiving 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, if one fails to denounce the enemies of the Lotus Sutra, it will be impossible to attain the way. So what does he say there again? He says, even those with profound faith do not reproach the enemies of the Lotus Sutra. So they have profound faith, but they don't practice correctly because they don't understand the teaching and the strictness of the teaching. Okay? And that's why you have to find a correct teacher, because a correct teacher understands that strictness. It was delineated to them by their teacher, their correct teacher. A correct teacher can only become a correct teacher by virtue of having had a correct teacher. This is all about karma. This is all about karma, who you are and how you got there. And now we'll go back. And I'm going to go ahead and get at least the first introduction going. Lecture, page 185. Starting with the gray box highlights. Written in 1276, recipient believed to be addressed to the lay priest Soya, a samurai and lead disciple in Shimoza province. This letter highlights the indivisible bonds shared by teacher and disciple. What does indivisible mean?
Make one with the
Can never be separated. They're the same thing. Okay? They're an overlap of one another. It's just the bodies wear out. That's why it has to go from one vessel to the next vessel. Do you understand? Key points of this letter. The elements of both reality and wisdom are necessary for revealing our Buddhahood. Both those things. All right? Buddhist practitioners need to seek the correct teacher who propagates the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the embodiment of these two elements. A correct teacher demonstrates a firm commitment to rebuke slander of the law. Anybody see me ever hesitate to do that? No. Okay, good. I'd be in trouble if I had. Following such a teacher is key to attaining enlightenment in this defiled age. Is key to attaining enlightenment in this defiled age. Is key to attaining enlightenment in this defiled age. So, a lot of people would read this and they'd think, oh, Daisaku Ikeda is talking himself up. This is all about, I'm the correct teacher, I'm Daisaku Ikeda. No. This is defining what the correct teacher is always, and it's not always just Daisaku Ikeda. Is he a correct teacher? Yes. Has he helped manifest many other correct teachers? Yes, he has many disciples. I'm one of them. Okay? But who's he a disciple of? He's the disciple whose mentor was Josei Toda.
Yes.
whose mentor was Tensaburo Makaguchi. Okay? This goes all the way back to Nichiren Daishonin. Do you understand that? Mentor and disciple is not a new concept derived by the Soka Gakkai. He says, no matter how famous or successful one might be, a life without a teacher or mentor is sad and lonely indeed. Genuine victory as a human being will also remain elusive. Because you've got nobody to help show you the right way. You're vulnerable to so many, many pitfalls. To have a lifelong mentor is one of life's greatest blessings. And the greatest lifelong mentor you can have is the Gohonzon itself. In August 1947, I met my mentor, Josei Toda, who later became the second president of the Soka Gakkai. The summer of my 19th year, I made a conscious decision to become his disciple. I instinctively, and that's the other thing, you'll feel this, you don't have to figure this out. This will be very clear. I instinctively felt I could trust Mr. Toda and that he was a person I should take as my mentor in life. Based on that firm conviction, I embarked on a journey together with him toward achieving a religious revolution and lasting world peace, a journey that I continue with unabated passion to this day. Throughout my 5-decade leadership of Kosen Rufu following Mr. Toda's death in April of 1958, I have fought my way through all kinds of difficulties, continually carrying on an inner dialogue with my mentor. Continually carrying on an inner dialogue with my mentor. Now, I do the same thing. That doesn't mean the mentor never leaves your life. Okay? Because you realize there's an inseparability. You're both poured from the same pitcher. Right? There's a dependent origination reason for why they are in your life. My mentor, and together with all of you, my fellow members everywhere, I have established the foundations for worldwide Kosen Rufu on an unprecedented scale. Today, I have not a single regret. I have won in every sphere. For me, there is no greater satisfaction in life than reporting my successes to my mentor. Present tense. Do you understand? Mentor is not gone. Mentor is not forgotten. Mentor is with you every step of the way. The profoundest life is one dedicated to pursuing a shared ideal with one's mentor. The loftier the ideal, the more valuable and enduring a legacy such a life can leave behind. To realize happiness for oneself and others, this is the eternal ideal of all humankind. It represents the ultimate wisdom waiting to be found in the depths of each person's life. It is the genuine yearning that underlies all life's workings. At the same time, no goal is more difficult to achieve. This is because the dark clouds of ignorance and greed blanket our lives and obscure the sun of wisdom and idealism. But what did he just say there? He says, to realize happiness for oneself and others, this is the eternal ideal of all humankind. There isn't a single philosophy that's not based on this goal. Happiness for everyone. Salvation for everyone. Justice for everyone. Okay? An end of suffering for everyone, right? That's the basis of what we're doing. The ultimate solution. Nichiren Buddhism provides us with the philosophy and practice for realizing genuine happiness for ourselves and for others. Its driving spirit is to undertake this difficult challenge and never give up trying to achieve it. Never give up. That's why we have to practice to the last moment with faith to the last moment of our life. And it is the mentor and disciple relationship that lies at the very heart of this human network and the united efforts so vital to succeeding. To live in accord with this path of mentor and disciple is to lead an unsurpassed life, one committed to opening the way to peace and happiness for all humanity, one committed to Kosen Rufu. All right? To bring the nourishment of wisdom and the moisture of compassion to the parched fields of people's lives that have been devitalized by greed, anger, and ignorance, and restore them to the lush green fields of their original state. This is the vow of the mentor and disciple in Buddhism. Everybody following me? And in one respect, improving the human condition in this way could be called a fervent wish of all mankind. In the writing we are studying this time, The Essentials for Attaining Buddhahood, Nichiren Daishonin describes the heart of a genuine Buddhist teacher by sharing his own spirit of striving selflessly, no matter the hardship, to cause the water of the infinite wisdom of the Buddha to flow into the wasteland of people's lives in the evil world of the latter age. Written in August of 1276, it seems this letter was addressed to the follower known as the lay priest Soya. In the first half of the letter, Nichiren indicates that the way to Buddhahood lies within the two elements of reality and wisdom, and emphasizes the importance of seeking the correct teacher in the latter day who propagates the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is the embodiment of these two elements. In the second half, the Daishonin asserts that the correct teacher will demonstrate both in spirit and action a firm commitment to rebuking slander of the law. And he further explains that following such a teacher is key to attaining enlightenment in this defiled age. The entire letter can be viewed as highlighting the indivisible bonds shared by teacher and disciple. Let us study the great path of disciples working wholeheartedly alongside their teacher to cause the law to flow unimpeded in people's lives, thereby paving the way for the happiness of humanity. And that's where I'll stop, because that's the perfect place to start next week. Page 187, that's when the lecture will actually begin. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.